My name is Beth. I am a mother of 7, but I'm also a student of scriptures, and most importantly, I am a servant of God. And so let's talk about deal breakers. So what is a deal breaker? A deal breaker is kind of that bottom line. What is the most important thing to you in the situation? I see it in people's food budgets all the time. And some people will budget large amounts of money to make sure that they have the highest quality food that comes from the best sources, that is checking off all the boxes that's important to them. And that's great. So you have people that will pay $6 for the bunch of organic free-range kale that they find at the store. And then you have other people that coffee is a significant deal breaker to them. They must have the perfect roasted blend, and some people, if it's not Starbucks, it's not coffee. Some people, their bottom line is the budget. I probably fall closer to this category. But I mean, 7 kids, we've got 9 mouths in our home. It's a lot of people to feed. So I'm very budget conscious. So people who are like that, they're like, this cheese is 50% off. I've just got to scrape mold off that one part and it'll be fine. I'm not quite that bad, but I'll take the funny looking produce at the store and I'll make do with it. Some people, their bottom line shows in their relationships. Their deal breaker is very clear, where it's, for example, I could never marry a cat person. I'm sure that we all know that person. So they have this deal breaker in their relationships and in their what they're looking for with that. We have some people that their deal breaker comes out in family relationships, where I could not sit down and eat Thanksgiving dinner with somebody who voted like that. Or we have our deal breakers in church, where I could not attend a church that fill in the blank. We all have deal breakers. We all have that one line that we're not willing to cross. Jesus met people who had deal breakers too. And there's a story in John chapter 6 that's it's kind of bizarre. So he's coming off of feeding the 5,000, and his ministry is on this huge upswing where he's attracting followers left and right and left and right. And more than just the 12 are walking with him and listening to him and trying to learn from him. And in theory, he could have created this huge mega ministry at that point. But here's what he did. He told them, if you're going to be my true followers and you want real life, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. True food is eating my flesh and drinking my blood. And people were shocked because partly he's talking about cannibalism, right? This is really, really scary stuff in a culture that didn't even eat pork. They didn't eat pork. They didn't eat certain kinds of fish. They were very restrictive in their diet. Even when they killed the meat that they did eat, like birds or lambs or goats, they would drain all the blood out. And he's telling them, if you want to have true life, you've got to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And people were horrified. And he let them be horrified. He never told them, oh, don't worry, it's just symbolic. We're going to have this ritual. It's going to be called communion. It's going to be fine. It's symbolic. He never told them anything like that. They came to him and they said, this is a hard statement. And he's like, yeah, it is. But then people left him. They couldn't handle that weight that he was putting on them. Understandably, a very big weight that sounded crazy to a very sane person. It would sound crazy to us too. The disciples, the 12 who had been with him since the beginning. So he asked them in verse 66, as a result, many of his disciples withdrew, the ones that had been following him recently. They withdrew and were not walking with him anymore. And so Jesus said to the 12, you do not also want to go away, do you? Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom should we go? You have the words of eternal life, and we have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God. For many of the disciples that day, the bottom line, the deal breaker, was the idea of drinking blood and eating flesh. And that's pretty understandable. But for the disciples, for the 12, their deal breaker was Jesus himself. They were willing to accept the hard sayings of Jesus because they recognized that in him was the source of eternal life, and that he, and only he, was the Holy One of Israel. And it is amazing to me because we see that idea of a deal breaker in our culture today, right? We know people that have walked away because they came across their deal breaker, because they thought that the Christian faith, that the standard that God gives us, say in the area of sexual ethic, is too restrictive, and they want the sexual freedom that is recognized in culture. Or I had this one student when I was in youth ministry that I asked her, I said, well, what's holding you back? Why won't you commit to God? What is the thing? And she said, it's drugs. I want to smoke marijuana, and I know that that's not okay if I commit my life to God. And Jesus asks us to die to ourselves, to die to our own desires, to pick up our cross daily and follow him. That's not an easy task. That's not asking us to just frolic through life with Jesus hand in hand. We get relationship with Jesus when we lay down our own lives. But it's hard to do that. There's this preacher. His name is Sam Albury, and he's same-sex attracted and lives a celibate life in order to be in line with the Bible. And people have told him, oh, wow, it must be so hard for you to be a Christian, for you to be a follower of Jesus. And he tells them, I love this response, he tells them, well, if it's not hard for you to follow Jesus, I question if you're doing it correctly. Because the truth is, we all have to lay down something to follow Christ. And for the disciples, the deal breaker was following Christ. They were willing to accept whatever came with that, whatever cost it required. I want that to be my deal breaker too. I don't want to tell God, you've crossed my boundary, you hit my deal breaker, I'm done. Because truly, I don't think I would honestly be a servant of God unless Christ himself was my deal breaker. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.